Excellent, thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, so as mentioned, if you do have any questions throughout this, please do put them into chat or shout out. I am happy to answer them as we go through. So this is Power Automate 101. So this is meant very much as an introductory session to Power Automate. So really aimed at people who have had very little exposure or no exposure at all to Power Automate. And it's really a guide on how to get started and start your journey into automation. So first of all, a little about myself. My name's Dave Burrell. I am the Architecture Capability Lead for Power Objects in the UK and EMEA. You can find me on Twitter. I've got my own website, again, where I blog about a lot of Power Automate content, and you can also find me on LinkedIn. So if you do have any questions after this, please do reach out on one of those platforms, and I'd be happy to help anyone along with their automation journey. Okay, so today's session, PowerPoint has decided not to move to the next slide. Give me a second. There we go. So today's agenda is an introduction to Power Automate. We'll then look at working with Power Automate, so what actually makes up the Power Automate platform. We'll then do some work and we'll do a bit of a demo on creating your first flow, and then we'll answer any additional questions that have not been answered throughout the slide deck or the demo. So the first thing we're going to do is have an introduction to Power Automate. So for those that don't know what Power Automate is, Power Automate is a way for non-developers to work smarter by automating processes that don't necessarily have to have human involvement. So it provides a user and a very intuitive, friendly visual designer that allows you to build automated workflows without the need to write any code. It's got a number of connectors, which we'll come on to in another slide. So at last count, Power Automate was able to connect to 316 different services. Those services include both Microsoft services and non-Microsoft services, such as Twitter, Facebook. There's even connectors for Oracle, for IBM functionality, for Salesforce. So really, there's lots of different connectors that you can use and enable straight out of the box. And it takes away the complexity of trying to figure out how to integrate different systems across different platforms. And as you'll see when we come to build our first flow within the Power Automate platform, you'll see how easy it is to connect different services together. For those who don't know, Power Automate was initially built on top of the Logic Apps platform. So Logic Apps was a developer's system in order to build automations within your business. Microsoft identified that citizen developers and non-developers would also benefit from that type of functionality. So they built the Power Automate front end. There is a lot of chat around, should I use Power Automate or should I use Logic Apps? Power Automate is on parity with Logic Apps. So unless you are a hardcore developer and you want to use the Azure platform, you can achieve absolutely everything you can in Logic Apps within the Power Automate platform. So for people who are just starting out, Power Automate is definitely the way forward. So really what Power Automate is designed for is to turn outdated into automated. So it's really about looking at the processes within your business, in your organization, where you spend a lot of time doing copy and paste type work or doing tasks that are fairly repetitive and consistent, where you could look at introducing an automation to do it for you. So it's really designed to boost productivity. So by implementing automation workflows, it allows you more time to complete other tasks because you no longer have that overhead of working through monotonous tasks on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. It's quick and it's secure, and it also works at scale. So whether you've got someone doing data entry or copying data from spreadsheets into a CRM system, it eliminates that need. So whether you're talking about running it once a day or once every minute, it's able to handle that scale. So you can run these workflows as often or as little as you like. It's also got the advantage, because it's built within the Office 365 platform, you get access to all the same security measures, such as data loss prevention, identity, and access management. It also allows you to put intelligent workflows to work. So it allows you to automate time-consuming manual tasks, and you can also build in AI capability along with kind of standard workflow capability. So you can implement any of the cognitive services, for example, that are available within the Azure platform. As I mentioned, there was, at last count, approximately 316 connectors. It was a few weeks ago I counted, so that has probably gone up because there is connectors being released every day and every week. And as you can see here, there's a lot of services that are available out of the box. So as you would expect, the Microsoft services are definitely available. So SharePoint, OneDrive, Dynamics, but you've also got access to competitors' systems. So for example, Salesforce, there is connectors for that. So even if you're not in a Microsoft house and you're using other services, you can connect these together using Power Automate. I'm not going to touch on it too much within this session, but there's also the option, if you don't have a connector available out of the box as part of the Power Automation platform, you can build custom connectors that can consume any REST API. So if you have a REST API, you can easily consume that using a custom connector. In terms of the pricing, there is a few different options. So if you are already an Office 365 user, you do get a number of flows to run each month. So if you've got an Office 365 E3 account, each user within that tenant that has that license type can run a flow 2,000 times per month. So it's a common misconception that each user can run 2,000 and then the next user has to run 2,000. The way that the licensing works is, for every single user within your tenant that has an E3 license, 2,000 flow runs are added to a pool. So if you have 10 users, you get 20,000 runs in your tenant. So all of them could be consumed by one user, or they could be spread across all of the users. So you don't have to buy additional runs if the one user goes over the 2,000, as long as you stay within the runs in the pool. Any questions so far on that? Nope, nothing so far. Great.
No, we've had nothing come up in the chat. Thanks, Dave.
Excellent. So the other option is, if you're not an Office 365 user or a Dynamics 365 user and getting those flow runs as part of your other licensing, you can buy a per user plan, which allows an individual to create and run unlimited flows for £12 per user per month. If you want to use the RPA functionality, which is the bot functionality, I'll touch on it very briefly within this. It goes up to £31 per user per month, again for unlimited runs. The other option is, if you don't want to buy a per user basis and you've only got one or two flows that you want to run as part of your implementation, you can buy a per flow plan. So that starts at £376 per month for 5 flows. And again, you can run them an unlimited amount of times per month. So I've just seen a couple of questions come in around, is it the same for E5? Yes, E5 licenses also get a number of flow runs as part of their license, and again, that is pooled. And I see another question about P1 or P2 licenses. So P1 and P2 licenses are now historical. This is the new licensing model. So it's a per user plan with RPA, or a per flow plan. Any other questions around licensing before we move on to more of the functionality? Nothing that I can see. If there is any more questions around licensing, please just raise them and I'll pick them up. Yep, I will get the link to the licensing on Microsoft for you. Okay, so working with Power Automate. So Power Automate, in terms of an overview, so for those who have been about for a wee while, Power Automate was originally called Microsoft Flow. So this has caused a great amount of confusion in the community, because what happened was, in order to bring Microsoft Flow into line with the Power Platform, so Power Apps, Power BI, etc., they rebranded Power Automate to become, Microsoft Flow to become Power Automate. Where this has caused confusion is, although the platform is called Power Automate, what you actually create within Power Automate is still called flows. So Power Automate is the platform. What you actually create is a flow. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is how to create a flow within the Power Automate platform. So in terms of a more general overview, Power Automate is a cloud-based platform. So you cannot get Power Automate on-premise. You can use Power Automate to connect to on-premise services using the gateway, but you can't run your own Power Automate on-premise. It's only available within the cloud. The reason for this is because it's built on top of Azure Logic Apps. Azure Logic Apps is, again, only available in the cloud. You cannot run it on-premise. Flows, like traditional Dynamics workflows, can be packaged into solutions, same way as you can with Power Apps. So if you're working with flows inside the Common Data Service, you can add them to solutions and use common application lifecycle management tools to deploy them across multiple environments. I'll probably run some webinars in the future about how to do that. But again, this is very much an introduction to this, so it's probably too high level for this conversation. In terms of the Power Automate structure, when you're building a flow, there's effectively 3 components to it. You have a trigger, so that is the piece that tells the Power Automate when to trigger, when to fire, when to run. So this can be broken down into a few different areas. Some of the triggered examples are when an action happens, it should trigger the flow. So an example of that is when a document is created in OneDrive, when a record's updated in Dynamics 365, when you receive a tweet. So these are all examples of triggers, which then leads into action. So from that initial trigger, you can perform a number of actions. So it could be 1 action, it could be 100. For example, your trigger could be when a file is created in OneDrive, you want to create a copy of that in a different location. So that would be your action. Your output is that the file is created in that other location. So that is the 3 steps of a flow. So there is some complexity in there, which I'll cover in the next few slides. So you can do things like conditions and switches. So if it meets a certain criteria, it'll do 1 action. If it doesn't meet that criteria, it'll do something differently. So again, that's a bit of complexity that you can put into any given flow. So the reasons that Flow and Power Automate is such a user-friendly and easy to use tool is there's lots of really good functionality within it that allows you to basically achieve any automation you can think of. So one of the main pieces within Power Automate, and one of the biggest drivers that I would advise anyone to look at Power Automate, is the use of dynamic data. So what dynamic data allows you to do is from your trigger action, so let's say for example, it was the creation of a file on OneDrive. What the dynamic data allows you to do at that point is use any of the metadata that's associated to that file. So when you say on the creation of a file, when that flow runs, it'll have access to all of the information about that file. So it'll know who created it, it'll know the file name, the file type, the file size, and you can use that information dynamically to be able to do your next actions. So you don't have to type in any code to use that information in the next steps of your automation. So what I'll do as part of the demo is I'll show you how that works. And what happens is every time you add an additional step or an additional action to your flow, you get access to that dynamic data as well. So you've always got access to any information that's either put into the flow or created by the flow throughout, which makes it very easy to build up automations. The other really powerful piece about Power Automate is conditions and switches. So conditions and switches offer ways to introduce conditional branching into the flow. So conditions are exactly like if statements within Excel. If a value equals this, then do this. I'll cover on the demo the difference between conditions and switches. They are quite similar, but there's some very clear use cases in which you would use a condition and which you would use a switch. So I will cover that in more detail as we get into the demo. The other powerful piece is variables. So variables in Flow are like having a scratch area or a whiteboard where you can jot down notes for any information that you might need later on. So you can initialize variables and use it for things like where you want to increment or decrement, or that word I can't say, a value depending on the data type. It can also be used as condition criteria to hold a value that you need to use later on. So for example, in an update, you might want to hold a value such as a good to be able to use later on in your flow. So it's a good way of holding a bit of information from earlier on in the flow that might change as part of your actions, but you want to hold the original value. So you can use a variable to hold that piece of information. So it's like creating a static field in Excel that you want to use multiple times throughout a formula. The other piece is looping. So what will occasionally happen is you might go and your automation might return multiple records. So for example, you might want to apply a change to all of the contacts of an account within Dynamics 365. So what your flow can do is it can pick up all of the individual contacts, run the action on a loop, so it'll apply to every single contact that it finds. So again, this is really good for where you want to find lots of sub-records and do an action on them. So it can loop through them and it will continue to do that until it gets through all of the records. And from a scalability point of view, it can handle lots and lots of records. So there's no issue with feeding in 1,000 records for it to update. It will sit and run until it's complete. The other important piece that's not so much a function, it's more of a guide, is on naming convention. It's really good to make sure that you name your flow to make sure that people know what it does. This is particularly important for instant flows, so where you're triggering them through a button. It's really good to get a good naming convention that your business understands so that when they click the button, they know what's going to happen. In terms of the other naming, it's good again because an administrator is going to look at this and it's good for them to know what that flow does. So generally when I'm naming flows, I try to be as descriptive as possible on exactly what the flow does. so that people have a good understanding of what happens if they run that. Okay, any other questions around some of that functionality?
We had one come in say, how do you handle exceptions?
Okay, so there is a level of error reporting within Power Automate. So I will show that as part of my demo. There is some ways to handle exceptions if they happen mid-flow. You can put them out to log, etc. I'm not going to cover that as part of this session. That's more advanced functionality, but if you do need any assistance or help on that, please reach out to me after this. Okay, and finally, before we go into the demo portion of our presentation, is around testing and run history. So the way that you can run and build your flows is it allows you to test the flows before you activate them for your business. So you can test them, you can review the results, and then modify them should the result you get be unexpected. There's a couple of different ways to test. You can perform the action that triggers the flow, or you can use data from a previous run. So if, for example, you test the flow once by using a trigger and you find out that it fails, you can continue to modify and run the test off the same piece of data that caused the trigger without having to continually perform the trigger action, which is a great time saver if you're building really complex type flows. So what we'll do is we'll go into creating your first flow and how to do that. What I'll do is I'll go through a couple of different examples and we'll go through a few iterations of the flow, adding complexity as we go. So I will just escape out of here and hopefully you're able to see the Office 365 homepage.
Yes, we can.
You can. Can you see it okay, or do I need to zoom in a bit?
Could you zoom in a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So that I'm working on a really big monitor and I'm not sure.
That's good.
That's better. Excellent. Okay. So what I've done is I've set up a brand new trial for Office 365. I've not created any flows or created anything within it. It's a brand new trial. So the way in which you access and start your journey is you log into office.com with your credentials, and what you'll see is a Power Automate tile within the portal. If you don't see it here, the way that you access it is click on the app launcher, go to all apps, and you'll see Power Automate as one of the options. You select Power Automate and it will take you into the Power Automate portal. So there's a few different options that you have in order to create your first flow. So when I come to actually building a flow, I'm going to create it from scratch. But if you maybe don't have an idea of exactly what you want to do, there is some really good resources within the portal that help get you started. So for example, from the homepage here, you can see that they've got a featured template collection and it's broken down into a number of categories. So there's 11 templates to help your sales team, 12 templates that keep you informed on the go, 12 templates to increase your productivity. So if we select one of these, so for example, to help your sales teams, what it will do is it will show you some templates that other people have built to get you started on your journey. So for example, someone's built a flow that says receive a weekly email summary of any new Dynamics 365 opportunities. And you can see that this has been used 5,500 times. So there's lots of people using this flow. So even if you don't start from one of the templates, I would always advise have a look at see what other people are doing, because it's always a great way to get inspiration of things that you could implement that you might not have thought of yourself. So there's lots of great ideas here. And as you can see, Microsoft have not just done it for Microsoft products. There's lots of Salesforce, options here as well. So whether you're using Salesforce or Dynamics, from a sales point of view, there's options available. So that's one way of accessing the templates. The other option is from the navigation on the left-hand side, you can select templates, and this will give you all of the templates that are available. So the advantage of coming into this way is if you've got a starting point in mind, you can search templates. So for example, I'll search for OneDrive. And what it'll do is it'll bring up lots of different OneDrive type templates. So for example, save Office 365 email attachments to OneDrive, copy files between OneDrive and SharePoint. So again, this is a great way to come up with some ideas. So you can click on the template itself and it will show you exactly what it does. So it takes your OneDrive for Business and it copies to SharePoint. So again, really useful resource if you're lacking any kind of vision or idea of what you want to create. It's also broken down at the top here, so you can see where it's triggered by a button for data collection. So again, there's unlimited options. The chances are if you have an idea, someone's already built something similar, so you can always use that as a starting point. But what we're going to do is we're just going to go back to the home page. I'm going to show you how to build a template, a flow from absolute nothing, from scratch.
Before you do that, could you zoom in a bit more, do you think, please?
Yes, of course. Okay, so what we can do is from the left-hand panel, we can click on Create. So what this does is it gives you 4 different options in how to start off your template. So you can create an automated flow. So this is where the triggers come in. So the 3 main options that you would use to trigger is an automated flow. So this is where something happens, an action happens, so someone creates a file, and that triggers the starting point of the flow. The other option is an instant flow. So this is where the user clicks on a button or comes into the portal and starts the flow manually. Then you've got a scheduled flow, and this is where you schedule how often the flow runs. So you can schedule the flow to run at midnight every night to perform a set of actions ready for the next day. You've also got business process flows in here, but that is more a guided process where you can capture information. I will link to some blogs on that if you want to have a look at that, but that's more focused on Dynamics 365 users as an example. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to create a flow that's triggered by an event. So we'll select automated flow. I'll give it a name. So we'll call it OneDrive file created. So the first thing we need to do is search for a trigger. So what we do here is we search for the application that you want to trigger the event. So in this case, it's OneDrive. It will then go and find all of the triggers that are available for OneDrive. So what you've got then is you've got a number of different triggers available. So we can trigger this flow when a file is modified, when a file is created. So there's lots of different options here. So what we'll do is when a file is created, we can then do create. And what this does is it takes us into the starting point for our flow. What you need to do is each of your triggers needs to create a connection to the system that it's connecting with. So in this case, I want to connect to my OneDrive. So what I'll have to do is I have to sign in. This will then pop up the credentials. So what we'll do is I will just sign in. Oh, sorry, I know what I've done. I've selected OneDrive Personal. It should have been OneDrive for Business. Apologies. Okay, so it's automatically identified that I'm logged in with this user in the portal. So what it's then going to ask is for a folder. So because it's got your connection to OneDrive now, it's now got access to any of your folders within your OneDrive. So in this case, I don't have any folders within OneDrive, so I'm just going to select my root directory. So what this means is anytime a file is created within my OneDrive for Business root directory, it will trigger this action. Most connectors have got advanced options as well. So what you can do is within the OneDrive is you can say, do you want to include subfolders? So if I change that to yes, what it will do is it will look at any file that's created within my root or any subfolder within that root. In this case, I only want to do it for the root directory. I don't want it to interact with any of my subfolders. You can then infer content type. So if you know it's always going to be a picture or a document, you can set that as a custom value for that content type. If you get stuck or you need any help, you can click on info and it'll then learn more and it will take you to the guide for that connector. So there's always additional help available should you get stuck. So I've now got my trigger, so I'm going to save that. So in terms of error handling within the actual creation process, it's really good in terms of giving clear messages of what's happening and why it can't do something. So in this case, it says it should at least contain one trigger and one action before it can save. So what we're going to do is we're going to add an action. So this is where you can select once the flow triggers, what actually happens. So in this case, what I want to do is I want to, on the creation of a file, I want to, within OneDrive for Business, I want to copy that file to a different location. So what you have to do is I have to say, what is the file that I want to copy? This is where the dynamic content comes into play, because the flow, before you actually create the file, has no idea the details of the file you're creating. So what you can do here is, rather than typing in what the actual file is, what you know is, you know the file because of the dynamic content. So this is looking at the when a file is created step and making all the details of that file available to you. So what I want to do is, when a file is created, I want to take the file content and I want to take the file name. But what I want to do is, rather than just put the file in with the same name again, I want to append it with copy. So what it will do then is take the original file, then create in the destination path a copy of the file, and I don't want it to override. So then what I can do is I can save my flow there. So if I then duplicate this and just go to my OneDrive, so what we need to do is, in order to test this very simple flow, is we click on test. it'll ask me, do I want to perform a trigger action or do I want to use data from OneDrive for Business? So what I can do is I will perform the trigger action and click on test. It's now going to sit and wait for me to perform the trigger action. So from OneDrive for Business here, what I'll do is I'll create a new Word document. We'll just call it test. And we'll save it as test 1. Okay, so we've now got a couple of documents there. So what we can see now is our flow run failed. So this is where your error handling comes in and where it allows you to run and check all of the different things that are happening within your flow. So what I can do now is I can go back to my flows. I can open up my OneDrive flow and I can see it failed. So what you can do is you can then look at the details of what's happened. So we can see that it's identified that a file has been created. So it knows that I created a document. We can then look at the copy file. So then we can see here, we know something's gone wrong. So what's happened is it's passed in an input and it's been invalid. So there's something wrong at this step of our flow. So what we can do is we can go back and edit. We can have a look at what's happening. So I know what's happened here because it's told me that the step is wrong. The reason that it's wrong is it's not got a destination file path. It only had a file name. So what we can do is we can insert document a dynamic content to say that I want to put it into the same file path. And I want to give it the name of and then the file name. And if we save that, so this time we can do another test and we can use the data from our previous run. And we can select our document and click on test. And we can see the failure. So we can see what it's tried to do is it's taken the path, and so this is where you can start to work through the variances of what's actually happened within your flow and why you're getting the errors. So again, we'll just quickly close that and edit it. And what we can do is we can just add save, and this one should work. Joys of live demos. Second. So I'm just going to put it in file path just to show you the copy. So we'll save that. Shouldn't be, but let's just check. Oh, okay. Yep, sorry. So, and then let's do copy in there. Okay, so we can see it's running through if we give it a second. Okay, so this time it ran successfully. And if we go to our recent documents, files, we'll see that we've now got our copy. Any questions on that?
We had one question that said, should the first input be file identifier?
Yeah, it should have, and I selected the wrong one. Thank you for that. Okay, so the next step that we're going to add in is a condition. So what we want to do is we want to add an additional action, and we want to select a control. So we've got the option to do a condition or a switch. What we'll do is I'll do a condition quickly, and then I'll explain the differences between a condition and a switch. So what we want to do is we want to do an initial condition. So when a file is created, I want it to run an action. So what we can check is we only want the action to run if the file name, let's say, contains test. So if the file name that's if the file that's been created contains test, I want it to copy the file. So we'll add an action. Again, we'll just add in OneDrive for Business. I want it to copy a file. And then again, we follow the same process. We input the file identifier. We say that it's going to be A and then the file name. And I don't want it to override. If it does not contain test, what I want it to do is if we add another action, we could make it, for example, copy to a different location. So you can follow a different chain of events. In this case, if it doesn't contain an action, I don't want it to do anything. So again, this is just saying if a file is created with test, it'll copy the file. So if we just save this, and I want to perform the action myself, and what we can do is we can create and open up test one. So I'm going to now save this as just document. We click on save. Oh, we've already got one called document. So that's me now saved a document called Dave. If we go back to our flow, we can see that it's running. We can see now that it checked to see whether it equaled test. It didn't. So it then followed the no path, and the yes path didn't ever get satisfied. So that's where you can use branching. You can then put in additional branches into the first branch, so you can branch as often as you want. So just quickly before we go on to more questions, is you can add also a switch. So the difference between a switch and a condition is you can add in multiple cases. So if the case equals a certain value, it follows this chain. If it equals this certain value, it follows this chain, and you can add as many switches as you want. So this is sometimes easier if you're looking for specific values for your condition. You can use switches rather than conditions. So that's kind of the main difference between conditions. Conditions are more if it equals X, do this. This allows you to handle very specific use cases. So the way that I've seen this work in the past is if you've got specific actions for specific accounts in Dynamics 365, you can specify these so that for those specific accounts, it performs a set chain of events, but for everything else, it just performs a more generic function. Okay, so if we go back to our slides, any questions?
Sorry, I don't know if this is correct. Is there a way to share a record?
I guess is there a bit more context around that question? Share the record in what system?
I can't see a name, but if the person who posted the question would like to unmute themselves if they want to ask the question.
Hello, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, I just wanted, do you know in Dynamics or in CDS you can share records as part of the system? Is there a way of doing that within Automate Flow?
Yes, do a new step. Yep, so within Dynamics 365, so there's not a connector that allows you to do that, but the way that I would achieve that is create an access team, and then you can create a record in the access team for that individual. I guess what's the use case where you would be looking to do that?
We can't use access teams in our particular scenario, so I've got a workflow at the moment where we share records. So what I want to be, obviously I want to upgrade to using Flow, and so I'm trying to figure out a way you can share records in Flow. I haven't come across it, so I just thought I'd ask if you or anyone else on the call knows how to do that.
Yeah, it's certainly not something I've done before, but if you want to contact me after this, I can certainly help. I can have a look and do a bit of investigation to see if there's a way, unless anyone on the call's already done it.
Hi, it's Matt Collins-Jones there. I was in Ryan McLean's session earlier, and he was sharing records. Granted, it was via access teams, but there is a grant access action inside Dynamics that you can call from Flow or from Power Automate, and that should enable you to share it with users. It'll be a bit tricky to set up, but if you can do it in a workflow, you can do it in Flow.
Yeah, certainly the way I've seen it done before is using access teams. But yeah, let's have a look at that, and we can definitely work through that, because I would be interested in finding that solution. Is it 365 in the cloud that you're doing it on?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so the other option that was mentioned was obviously grant access, which is available through the comment.
You can access the Common Data Service connector only if you.
Yeah, I don't have a CDS environment set up, which is why I can't see it there. Yeah, the associate record is also an option from Paul. Yeah, so it's got a lot of responses to that question. Any other? So no, I can't show a demo of how to use Flow with Dynamics 365 just now. This tenant doesn't have Dynamics set up. The other question, can you check for a substring in the demo for the file name, e.g. the file name contains 001. So using that condition that I set, so I used the contains function. So even if test was inside the text and it wasn't the start or the end, it would still pick that up. So Zapier, any experience between Zapier and how it works compared to Power Automate? So I have used Zapier in the past before Power Automate existed. I've not done any real comparison between the two since I started using Power Automate. So I couldn't really give any advice on which was better or which use cases required what. What I will say though is I've not found any connection that I've tried in Power Automate where I've needed to look elsewhere. Does the flow execute under the security context within Dynamics 365? Yes, it does. Any more questions? We have a couple of minutes. Nope, doesn't seem like we've got any more questions. Well, all's left to say is thank you very much for everyone's time today.
Thank you, Dave. Fantastic presentation. I really enjoyed watching that and I got a lot from it. So thank you very much. I wonder if everyone would like to take themselves off mute and give Dave a round of applause for that. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you very much. Just kind of final, if anyone has got any use cases they want to work through, please just reach out to me either on Twitter, LinkedIn, or email me directly, and I'll be happy to help anyone that's struggling.
Thanks, Dave. Can I also remind everybody, fill in your feedback forms, please. Give us some feedback on Dave's sessions. The slides will be shared on d365ug.com/UK, and the session will be posted on the website and on YouTube. Your next session is at 1:30, the Microsoft Roadmap with Chris Huntingford. But everyone, please feel free to pop into the virtual lobby. A lot of us will be on there. Obviously, grab yourself some lunch, but come and join us in the virtual lobby, and we can answer any other questions that you might have. I'll post the links in the chat now. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you all.
Obviously, if anyone else has any questions that they didn't want to ask in the bigger group, then I'm sure Dave will be around for a couple more minutes.
Dave, are you still there?
Oh, it looks like he may have actually just dropped off.
Oh, okay.
I think he probably will have popped over to the virtual lobby. So if you want to try over there, or we'll grab him if you still need him.
Because I didn't get his details initially. If one needed to connect with him, I don't know if you have those details.
Yeah, I will see if I can find them out for you, and I'll get back to you.
Okay, so, lovely. Thank you.
I'll speak to Dave in a second and get them to post them in the virtual lobby as well. So if you pop over there, I'll get him to put them in there.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.